Hey, what's up? In today's video, we're talking about an episode all about Bullock.
Here's the clicker. No one would blame you.
This episode follows Bullock as he tries to figure out who's been trying to kill him, and the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because of one scene in particular, but I'm not going to ruin the surprise. This episode is also just a really good episode, and it's pretty slept on when it comes to Batman the Animated Series. Well, I guess this is a part of the adventures of Batman and Robin, and are you ready for a can of worms? The first season was comprised of 65 episodes and was known as Batman the Animated Series. Then Fox ordered a second season with only 20 episodes. This second season was The Adventures of Batman and Robin, and it had some slight redesigns and an intro that was slapdash together clips of the original intro as well as episode clips. Then after that you had The New Batman Adventures, which is best known for the total overhaul in character design, but this uses the original opening with no new clips or anything else added. And all of this is under the umbrella of Batman the Animated Series. Robin isn't even in this episode, so I could have just said that this was Batman the Animated Series and you wouldn't have known the difference. Anyway, this episode is great because of its sense of style. This is very much a hard-boiled detective story, and this episode actually won an Emmy for outstanding music direction and composition. I guess if you're not a fan of the genre, you probably won't like this episode, but one of my favorite episodes of Family Guy is The Fat Man Always Rings Twice, and one of my favorite game series is Max Payne, so you can probably guess where I stand. Also, if you're wondering, my favorite episode of Family Guy is Season 2, Episode 3, Da Boom.
Everyone leave. I have to poop. Now!
I think this intro's gone on long enough, so let's go ahead and just get right into the episode all about Bullock. Getting into this episode, we open up with some smooth jazz over a decent enough title card. We then get thrown right into the action when we see Bullock headed home before almost getting ran over. The masked man also has a gun but doesn't use it, which is an interesting play. We then cut to Batman responding to his beacon, but instead of Commissioner Gordon, we see that Bullock was the one that called for the bat. Before watching this episode, I kinda just thought of Bullock as the Brooklyn goon who would come in to say funny things, but with him being at the center of this episode, we actually get depth to his character.
Let's get something straight from the get-go. I think you're a freak and a menace, and those are your good points. But the commish says you serve a purpose, so I go along.
After Bullock tells Batman about how he almost got a fender massage, he asks the Bat for help because Bullock's shit list is extensive and his style of policing is less than standard.
Are you on the take?
Watch it, freak! I never took a dime from nobody. I just bend the rules a little sometimes. You understand?
After giving Batman a copy of his case files, we see Bullock entering his apartment accompanied by the smoothest jazz. Bullock's landlord, Nivens, then comes out to berate the hard-boiled Harry about mud and stank.
There's a doormat outside, Mr. Bullock.
Really? I thought you were the doormat around here, Nivens.
We then see a paranoid Bullock almost put a hole in his wall over Roach shadows before cutting to the Batcave, and I just want to say that the shots in this episode are great at building tension and mystery. Like, the jazz helps a lot, but the angles and lighting they use are also very reminiscent of the detective genre. Bruce lets the computer scan the disc while he goes out to be Bullock's guardian angel, and we get a kid-friendly police raid.
Police! Nobody move!
One of the perps makes a run for it, and this leads to a rooftop shootout where Bullock almost gets got. And please, look at this and tell me it doesn't remind you of Max Payne. I'm very aware that the game came out after this episode and way after the comic it was based on, but I mean, come on. A few minor rewrites, and this is kid-friendly Max Payne. Batman tells Bullock that he has some questions, and he'll find him after Bullock finishes his shift before making his trademark stealthy escape.
Show off.
Cutting to later in the night, we see a paranoid Bullock almost shoot Batman before we hear some investigation take place.
You dusted them for prints?
Yep. Nada. Hand-delivered to my mailbox.
Batman also talks about professional hitmen, and it got my ears to perk up while watching this episode.
A professional hitman would do you here, not on the street.
So what? Guy who gets whacked by an amateur's just as stiff as a pro job.
We then see Bullock making a late-night donut run, but this moment of bliss is interrupted by the masked attempted murderer.
Taking care of this land.
Oh, so you're talking about like a commune?
Yes. You know what I'm saying? So just in case something happened, we could lock that shit down. Like, you know what I'm saying? If the world ever came to shit, there's already 5 of us. And then like
I would love to make a cult, okay? If you're really down for this, let's make
It's not a cult. It's not a
Yeah, we keep that under wraps, but I mean, let me tell you. Getting back to the episode, we see that Bullock obviously survived this attack. I mean, it would be a pretty short episode if he didn't. We then see the pressure starting to get to Bullock as he sits at his desk drinking his coffee shaken, not stirred.
You don't look so good. I mean, you never look good. But today you look worse.
After 15 years working in this cesspool, I like to see how good you look.
Batman then shows up to ask Bullock about Vincent Starkey, and we get the best part of this episode.
Do you want to live, Bullock? Then pay attention. Summer Gleason did an expose on South Gotham crack houses last week.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no need to adjust your TV set. Yes, you heard what you thought you heard. They just talked about crack houses in a kid's show. I know it's like a meme that kids these days aren't built Ford tough like they used to be, but you just could not do this today. Like, forget the novelty of seeing real guns instead of laser lumps. We got crack houses, baby. I was originally going to make a video over the episode Over the Edge, but halfway through that episode, I remembered about this scene and knew I had to show this to everyone I could. Getting back to the episode, Bullock makes his way to the local reporter Summer Gleason, and the grease is palpable.
That shoot you did down in Cracktown?
You still owe me for the last favor I did you.
Hey, Summer, where's your Christmas spirit? You know you can trust me.
Harvey does some good old B&E, but before we can see how that pans out, we see an actual fucking crack deal in a kid's show.
Here you go, my friend, and a happy new year to you. Free enterprise, what makes America great.
You know, this episode feels like a fever dream sometimes. Like, imagine when this episode came out and the internet wasn't what it is today, and you were just chilling at recess and your friend tells you about the episode of Batman where they talk about crack.
This is crack.
You'd think they were smoking crack, and the only way you would know any different is if you just happened to catch this episode on a Saturday morning. We see Batman interrogating this low-level criminal, and he spills the beans on Vinny's location.
Take 2.
Okay.
Cutting back to Bullock, Summer catches him in the act and promptly kicks him to the curb where Bullock hails a taxi.
Taxi!
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
Batman tells Harvey that he knows where Vinny the Shark is and what he's doing.
He's running rock crystal out of an abandoned auto plant out in Bayside.
I couldn't even make this shit up if I wanted to. Batman and Bullock get to the auto shop, and after some small talk of why the idle threats and not just action, we get a really good scene of Bullock and Batman busting this drug ring. What makes this great isn't the action. I mean, it's decent enough, don't get it twisted, but it's the fact that Bullock has always had a bone to pick with Batman, so seeing them work together is kinda heartwarming. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this is a literal drug factory, conveyor belts and all. Also, the music is just chef's kiss, and I'm not even that big a fan of jazz.
Have you heard the new hi-fis with quadraphonic sound?
They're the best hi-fis for
Jazz.
The tables are turned when the frame of a car is dropped on the duo and Vinny's backup shows up.
Taking out the Batman will make me look good in Gotham. But the real pleasure's gonna be taking you out, Bullock.
Batman just throws down a smoke pellet and we get Jazz Fight Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Bullock catches the shark and almost old yellers him before Batman shows up. We then see Bullock doing something he never does.
By the way, I still think you're a freak, but thanks.
During the interrogation, it's made clear that Vinny the Shark wasn't the one sending the notes, so Bullock is back to square one.
They say confession's good for the soul. You want to tell me why you sent me those letters?
You've taken one too many shots to the head, Bullock. What letters?
We then see Bullock returning to his apartment, but he's met outside by the masked attempted murderer.
You should have left town. I tried to scare you out. I didn't want it to come to this.
Batman swoops in to save the day, and we find out that the masked attempted murderer was the landlord the whole time, and he almost got away with it if it wasn't for that meddling bat. Niven's motivation was getting Bullock out of his apartment complex because he was fed up with the filth and stank, and we end this episode with a sitcom joke.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking of moving anyway. Neighborhood's really been going downhill lately.
We're not quite done yet, because if you remember earlier I said that this episode was based off of a comic, and I originally wasn't going to talk about it, but since it was a fairly quick read, I decided to give it a look, and I'm glad I did. I mean, there aren't any real major changes, it's actually a really faithful adaptation, and they mostly just toned down the comic. Like, the criminals being raided killed 2 bank guards and a driver instead of just scaring them. Also, right before they kick the door down, Bullock talks about how if he got his head blown off by someone in the apartment, it would spoil it for the person that's actively trying to kill him. And I know that not all comics are from the Silver Age, but it's still kind of surprising that they chose this story to adapt for a kid's show. Also, the comic actually has Robin in it, unlike the episode where Alfred took his place. Nivens also has better motivation in the comics. In the episode, it's basically just mud and general stank that drives him over the edge. While in the comics, Bullock blows cigar smoke in his face while basically threatening to shoot him, and they talk more about rent control. Basically, rent control means that since Bullock has been living there for more than 10 years, the landlord can't raise his rent, but recent city developments known as gentrification has made the area more valuable, raising rent for everyone but Bullock. Other than that, most of the lines in this episode were taken word for word from the comics, but there was one fairly big change I noticed. The animated series added all of the crack stuff. Like in the comics, they go from the rooftop of the police department to Vinny's warehouse. No Summer Gleason visit, no crack deal, and they don't even say crack once in the comics, they say rock crystal. This comic is pretty good though, and it's a fairly quick read, so if you like this episode, I highly recommend looking it up and giving it a read. Overall, this episode is a great little nugget buried in the absolute avalanche that is Batman the Animated Series. The story flows well, and by the end of it, I found myself getting wrapped up in the mystery and wondering what was going to happen next. I think the fact that the main villain isn't an established archfiend like Killer Croc or Black Mask is what makes this story so special. It's a bullet for Bullock, not a bullet for Batman, so having it turn out to just be the Penguin the whole time would have taken away from the story being about Bullock. It's also cool to see an episode dedicated to a side character. I mean, I love Batman just as much as anyone else, but with 109 episodes, I'm glad we get a break from the Bat while still being in the animated series universe. Also, I mean, this episode just looks great. It's a prime example of the dark and brooding setting that draws me back to the series time after time. What did you think about this episode? Let me know in the comments, and also let me know if there are any other episodes you'd want to see me cover. If you want to see more of me, I co-host a podcast with Arnie King called Henny for Your Thoughts, and we upload new episodes every 2 weeks. If you want to show your support and get behind the scenes updates, follow me on Patreon, and if you want general behind the scenes content, follow me on Instagram at PimpTurkey69. Until next time, later.